feel like this July episode, the soundtrack for it should be We Didn't Start the Fire.
If you're going to sort of control federal support, right, you're going to have sort of anti-vaxxers or whatever you want to call them, like at the helm.
Yeah.
The entire burden of proof, the entire focus and shift has to go on pharma.
The staff, current and former, got together and wrote this extraordinary letter to the NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya, and they sent it to members of Congress, they sent it to RFK, and what they're talking about is that we are deeply concerned. Virta now commits to stopping these increases completely, delivering 0% GLP utilization growth for employers, offering this drug class for obesity. Do you think they can actually keep this promise? Hello and welcome to Debunked, where we analyze healthcare news with some pizzazz and personality. I feel like this July episode, the soundtrack for it should be We Didn't Start the Fire. Oh my God, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I mean, let's just recount some of the national and international events of this past month. The US military deployed in Los Angeles to counter protesters. Israel targeting Iran's nuclear capabilities, taking out top generals, and who knows, the US may be getting involved. There is some talk of regime change. An Air India flight that crashes inexplicably after takeoff and killing everyone except one lucky soul. Minnesota Democratic politicians being targeted and killed by a madman. And of course, Gaza is still a mess. The Ukraine invasion by Russia is still continuing. So, because you're going away on vacation, we're recording earlier in June than we normally would. But there isn't any dearth of bad news, is there? I mean, every time I think that things possibly can't get any worse, it just does.
I like sometimes for my attire to represent how things are.
An 80s show.
Stranger things.
Oh my
right?
God, yeah.
But look, things can always get worse.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it.
So how easily we forget we went through COVID, right? It popped out of nowhere, shut down the world for many years, and then popped out, and it's like, what, COVID? What pandemic? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
So, and not to sound too flippant, but the price of eggs are down. So.
The price
Good stuff.
The price of eggs is down, and the inflation in May was less than expected. We don't have June data yet, and we don't know what the future holds economically, but the price of eggs is down, inflation is not as bad as it seems. I'm going to take that as a win. And now
Tiny win.
And now we'll move to that segment that we called, What Did the Trump Administration Do Now in Healthcare? So we're going to start there. So very first, number one, RFK Jr. retired 17 members of the Advisory Committee on Immunizations. I'm sorry, I'm getting the name of the group wrong. It is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. It is part of the CDC.
Right.
And they review vaccine data. They make recommendations on vaccines, especially childhood vaccines. As you know, childhood vaccines actually prevent diseases. Look at what's happened in Texas and other parts of the country where measles has spread. We had 3 people that died. 2 were kids, 1 was an adult, all 3 unvaccinated. So at a time like this, it's important for federal support of vaccines, and now this, group has been disbanded. There have been replacements that RFK Jr. has named. Predictably, perhaps 2 of them are known vaccine skeptics. And not that it matters, because we're living in a world where words do not matter. He was specifically asked in his Senate confirmation hearing about this particular panel, because everyone knows that he's a vaccine skeptic. And he had said that he was not going to alter the panel, and now he has. And his argument is that this move will actually restore public faith in vaccines. So first, your one-word response.
Phantasmagorical.
For the rest of us who was not that great in SAT English, what does that mean?
First of all, neither was I.
Okay.
Delusional. Very simply.
Okay. Now expand upon that reaction.
First of all, if this is the way we're going to go down, right, in terms of this committee, right, makeup and everything, we are screwed. I mean, but honestly, right? So if you're going to do this, the burden basically shifts to pharma, right? If you're going to sort of control federal support, right? You're going to have sort of anti-vaxxers or whatever you want to call them, like at the helm.
Yeah.
The entire burden of proof, the entire focus and shift has to go on pharma.
Yeah.
And then if you look at pharma, it's going to be big pharma, because right away the little guys are going to be like, dude, I can't afford to do this by myself.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the biggest thing here is that people don't realize is that the government funds a lot of the early R&D for these vaccines.
Correct.
Right? So even people who voted for this administration or want to go along with this and say, yeah, the vaccines are... So next time a pandemic hits, you're not going to maybe see the vaccine that's needed to come out as fast as it quite honestly did. I mean, that was still pretty fast.
So you're saying the capability will go away?
I think the capability of speed and execution is going to be tampered with, right? Because you're not going to have federal support.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's going to put pressure on those big pharma boys.
Yeah.
I.e., I call it the insulin mafia.
Oh, geez. So essentially what you're saying is that if the federal government is not stockpiling vaccines like it does normally, there is no financial incentive for vaccine players to keep making vaccines. So the small guys will be...
Small guys will go, so you're going to have big guys left.
Yeah.
Look, the other thing is that flu, RSV, all these things, they're smaller potatoes. The margins are smaller on these things too, right? So you're basically going to be driving R&D away from this. Not to mention the fact that like the government typically is a huge buyer of these things too, right? So then if there's no confidence that there's going to be a built-up demand, right? Then why am I going to go spend money in that space? Because I have to run a business. Yes, I care about public health, but I have to run a business, right?
Right.
And then let's not even talk about access to care.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just say they go and build this. It takes longer, first of all, right? So whatever is happening, small, big, medium, large, more people will die, okay? Fine, the thing comes out. Well, if the government is not sitting there saying, we're going to stockpile or we're going to buy, we're going to be a major buyer, I mean, these pharma companies are going to have to price this accordingly, right? So access to care. So now what? The low income or poor people are not going to get access, or they're going to be like second or third in line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So those critical access points. But I guess it fits with the administration, right? Survival of the fittest. Here you go.
Well,
survival of the fittest.
I'm not as negative about this administration. I do hope. COVID hit during Trump, and he was one of the people that really pushed to get the vaccines out early. Now, inexplicably, he undermined those same very vaccines, which I thought was strange.
Yeah.
But I do hope that if there's a real emergency, I think this government will swing into action. I don't know what it means for delays and stuff, how quickly they will be able to.
I agree with you, but the point is, again, what we're forgetting is you can't just suddenly flip-flop, right? And this administration is flip-flop. I mean, tariff, no tariff. Oh, let's do 180 delay. Let's do 120 delay.
Yeah.
Look, I have nothing against the people who are running this administration. My thing is, I'm a common sense guy.
Yeah.
When stuff doesn't make sense, I'm going to say, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So to me, you've been the president who went through this.
Yes.
And now you're putting into power who don't believe in vaccines.
Yeah.
So like, maybe you're just anticipating, dude, ain't gonna happen again under my regime. I don't care what happens after that. That's also part of the playbook.
I don't know. A once in a century pandemic. But anyway, we will not talk about that. I want to pick up on what you said about the government funds some of these early stage
Okay.
stuff, right? And so the second story under what did the administration do now is actually a response to what the administration has done. And I referred to the NIH, the National
Yeah.
Institutes of Health, and the fact that there have been stories of grant freezes, grant terminations, layoffs, and all
Yeah.
of that, to the point that the staff, current and former, got together and wrote this extraordinary letter to the NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya, and they sent it to the members of Congress, they sent it to RFK, and what they're talking about is that we are deeply concerned. We are concerned that that there have been grant terminations, there have been funding freezes, there's this politicization of science
Yeah.
without looking at evidence. And so I thought the letter was really notable. They're calling it the Bethesda Declaration. Of course,
Love it.
NIH's headquarters is in Bethesda. And so here are some of the points that they said in the letter. So they noted that since January 2025, NIH has terminated 2,100 research grants, totaling around 9.5 billion and 2.6 billion in contracts. They gave an example of a 5 million research study which was paused and stopped, actually, I shouldn't say paused, it was stopped when it was 80% done.
Right.
Now the government is going to claim we saved, 1 million. And these scientists are saying that, look, you wasted 4.
Totally agree.
Then the last point I wanted to make is patient safety. It's not just stop DEI research, stop that, or stop this. They're talking about no matter what the study is, patient safety is being harmed because they're abruptly stopping medications, abruptly stopping trials, and you are leaving participants with, some participants have like medical devices implanted that are no longer being monitored. So extraordinary, Stranger Things, whatever you want to call it. Truth is stranger than fiction, I feel like saying sometimes these days. But what was extraordinary is the fact that there were even current people who went and signed this letter, and it was not anonymous. There were anonymous signers, but there were other people that put their names to it. So my question is your initial response.
My one word first?
Yes.
Valiant.
They were valiant. I just hope that it means something,
I hope so. First, I know Bethesda well.
Yes.
I had a house in Bethesda.
Oh, God.
Right at the doorsteps of NIH. Did really well post-COVID. Sold it.
Oh, God.
But, Ani, look, anyways, what can you say here that has already not been said in the letter?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that, and the cornerstone of this, if you read through the tea leaves, is that these cuts are politically motivated. Like, that's what they're sort of claiming. They're saying, look, you're not thinking about it from a, basic premise of what this body's supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
From public health, safety, wellness perspective, right?
And data and science. Look at the evidence.
Data and science, right?
Yeah.
So, look, one thing from the general movement of the administration, of course, just like any other business, nonprofit, research, whatever, business operations, government agencies, you should be controlling costs, you should be cutting fat, you should be eliminating waste. Totally all for it. Mm-hmm. You don't go fruit ninja on this thing, which is basically what you've done, right? But to do cuts that are completely undermining common sense, public safety, I'm just going to say it is completely stupid. So my first word was valiant, and on the other side, it's completely stupid. Because, I mean, look at this example. I told my kids about this one. I was like, hey, 5 million, what if I gave somebody 5 million? They spent 4, there was $1 million left, and I just said, I'm going to not give it to you. I saved $1 million. They're like, no, you wasted 4. Right? Even my 12 and 14-year-old were like, hey, that's wasting of 4. You've blown 4. You didn't save 1. So it's, I mean, come on, I'm serious. Like, these people are smart. Can you not, like, really? Like that, this is what we're trying to do right now?
I think they may be smart, but I think if you are dogmatic about certain things, then your rationality and your reasonableness just goes away. And I fear that's where we are right now.
So, I mean, but I think even to expand on this, right? Again, I go back to the public perception here. I go back to people not realizing what is happening here in the public eye sometimes. We take for granted, right, these new innovations, these vaccines, whatever you want to call it. but there's decades of research,
Absolutely.
right? Grants, studies, scientists that are pouring their lives into this stuff to make this stuff that we just sort of say, oh yeah, this is just so simple,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of these people, let's talk about the cuts. They're probably getting paid adequately. Some are being paid less than, some are paying too much. But the point is, let's just assume they're being paid adequately. But these people literally are living behind a mission, right? People who go into research to do this stuff, to study complex things, dude, it is like, it comes from here.
Here. Agreed.
Right? And so, not to mention the ramifications on the global stage that this is going to have.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You're putting US under pressure from all these potential biological things that might happen, right? Yes, pandemic or whatever. And not to mention that, like, we like to sit here and say we're the leading nation for XYZ.
Yeah.
Well, so are we for research and stuff. We've talked about it in our post calls, right? Like how we pay for higher drugs because we are the ones responsible for most of the world's R&D on this stuff.
Correct.
It's the same thing with devices.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing with devices, implantables, drugs, and all these sorts of things. So you're going to sit there and basically put us back decades, right? Sometimes when you freeze these grants or studies that have been going on for 10 years, you can't just new administration pops in and says, oh, we're just going to go ahead and unpause that pause.
Right.
You have to go back and restart everything.
Right.
So this is like a big deal. So this is like literally they're putting themselves out there.
They are, and we're going to put the Bethesda Declaration in the description of the video, so I urge you to go and read it. You mentioned devices.
Yeah.
The third crazy thing that the administration did involves FDA and CDRH, which is the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, that reviews medical device applications, clears them, approves them. So the latest news out of that is that they were developing a ChatGPT-like tool for CDRH. It's called CDRH GPT.
Wow, what a brilliant naming convention.
Well, it's still in beta testing, so that name might change.
Yeah.
But what's being reported is that it has been rolled out without inadequate, testing. Users are saying that it's not working properly. Now, it was intended to help speed up, medical device reviews, make the process a little bit easier. Users are saying that they can't upload documents, they can't submit queries properly. They're saying that the system is not even connected to the internet, so it cannot gather information on like peer reviews or just current information. So this is out there, rushed and ahead of time. Then there's a second tool that was also, I believe, deployed in June, and that is agency-wide. That's called ELSA. That, I believe, is a Gen AI tool. And that was meant to, again, help with, surfacing information. And users are saying the same thing. They're saying that this is not ready for prime time. And when they queried this Gen AI tool, they queried ELSA with questions about FDA-approved product.
Right. Yeah.
The technology was providing incorrect summaries. So, your first response? Perilous.
Right?
Perilous.
The archaic form
of perilous.
There you go.
So dangerous, risky.
Yes. Shout out to the person in my family who is the vocab girl, Ripple. So this is what I used words that I typically don't use in my own language. So anyway, that's it. So.
All right. So, what I'm worried about is, look, everyone and their dog is now leveraging AI, right?
That's a good one.
There is nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Except how you use it. So there has been concern that with the FDA layoffs, that we're going to see, lengthening of review times, delays. Right. That's what the industry has been girding for, and you're hearing that too. So, is this rushed rollout of AI tools without proper vetting and validation, could this be a misguided response to stemming the industry's fears that, look, users, don't be worried.
Yeah.
We're going to get this done on time because we have AI now?
I was waiting for our AI comment for the, for our talk. We always have to talk about AI.
We have to talk about AI.
Yeah, right?
This was not a good story, AI
I know,
conversation.
but I mean, look, we all know this. If used safely and properly, massive benefit.
To AI,
Massive
sure.
benefit, right? So, but again, depending on what you're talking about, rushing into existence can be perilous. Oh, I used it in a sentence. Okay. So, I mean, just like anything else, right? In AI, this is like the AI playbook, handbook. You have to train it, you have to vet it before you put it into prime time.
Right.
So, if that's what's happening, then that's okay, right? I mean, if they're sort of just using this and working out the kinks, as they say, and
Yeah.
training it, and that's fine, because otherwise, with this, you're dealing with like catastrophic situation, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to, approve or not approve, right? Potential devices, implantables, with like bad data or bad AI. I mean,
Right.
this is not one of those things where like, hey, I'm deploying AI on a back-end administration tool, 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
This, please, we can't use an 80-20 rule with this thing.
True.
That could be really bad.
Really bad.
Not to mention the potential harm that patients could have, providers could have. I mean, I can see lawsuits coming out here, right? So accuracy has to be like the number one thing here. So if you're rolling out two tools, it's just like what we always talk about even with AI in the healthcare space, right? Back end, office, paperwork, get me faster to do my job. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't use it for patient decision making. I mean, use that same sort of, thesis for this. So and I know that, again, I'm not sort of blaming people here, but this administration sort of rule has always been, fast and furious.
Yeah.
Cut now, explain later, right? This is sort of the same thing. I mean, I saw in the article, it's like, oh, deadlines right now. Let's go. Like push.
Right.
Again, you know what? Hopefully what we've seen with other things as well is they'll Fruit Ninja the thing and then come back and be like, okay, we need to put, Humpty Dumpty back together again. So maybe that's what's going to happen here again. But I'm just like, and I think that the long-term effect and impact for everybody in AI, not just, you, me, everyone, is that, yeah, look, AI is here. It's going to be here. It's going to be a massively utilized tool.
Yeah.
It's going to drive down cost and potentially reduce, right, manual overhead. So I'm not sitting here, folks that have concern who work in these areas, absolutely you should be concerned, right? You should be, absolutely. But I think, having a supplemental human element, it's just like what we talk about with clinical decision support with AI. You have to do this. And this is not even just like, oh yeah, I think we've gotten into the point where we should just remove oversight. I think oversight in our space for clinical decision support, for device, drug, implantable approval, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. I think you can use the 80-20 rule to help you expedite and help you do that. But the final rule, please have a human look at this.
Of course.
Right? Because to your point, when they sort of asked it about approved devices, it was wrong.
Yeah.
So.
And this happens in my personal use of ChatGPT too. Sometimes it's fabulous, and sometimes it's like inexplicably wrong.
Yeah, I stumped ChatGPT yesterday.
Doing what?
I was doing a query, and like I was asking it like multiple different questions, and it just sort of like stopped working.
So it just had the dots and no answer.
No dots, and then it just said error while searching, and I was like,
oh my God,
I broke ChatGPT.
I never seen that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you should
like,
have taken a screenshot. That
I could probably do it. It's
still
still probably open on my tab. So.
Okay, so moving on from the administration,
Okay.
GLP1 drugs and weight loss has been a story that we have covered here on our show before, and it's out there in the marketplace. The really interesting thing is that these drugs work, but they're incredibly expensive, and so now employers are caught in a bind because more and more employees want them or want access to them for their families. And so every year, employers are seeing their costs rise. So in that context, this news out of this startup called Virta Health really caught my eye. So Virta Health is a digital health company. They're focused on nutrition and diabetes and weight loss. And they provided this performance guarantee as it relates to how employers spend on GLP-1. So I just wanted to read it out because it was fascinating.
And reversal of diabetes is what their initial claim was.
That's true. And I don't disagree with that, you know. I have seen with my parents, they're not diabetic, but sometimes when they eat a lot of sweets and carbs and all of that, they go into the pre-diabetic range. And then their doctor says, oh, you're a pre-diabetic now. And just hearing that, boom, they stop eating everything and then they're back.
It's called the Bengali effect.
It is the Bengali effect. We love our sweets. Anyway, so this is the performance guarantee that Virta Health announced. So they said, the guarantees eliminate financial risk for employers and health plans by ensuring Virta's health loss program pays for itself. It reins in GLP-1 spending increases, which are rising 70 to 200% annually across the industry. Virta now commits to stopping these increases completely, delivering 0% GLP utilization growth for employers offering this drug class for obesity, while also guaranteeing strong weight loss outcomes. 0%? I mean, wow, that's really a bold and industry-first claim. Can you describe their GLP-1 program? And do you think they can actually keep this promise?
Wow. First, the word baller.
I didn't ask you about the word, but he has the word already. Okay,
anyway, yeah, and I went like loser dictionary here, right?
Thank God for that.
Yeah. Okay, so look, the bedrock of any lifestyle-driven weight management program, okay? And full disclosure, we have an investment in the lifestyle medicine environment as well, not Virta.
Okay.
But basically...
But a competitor.
I would say probably attacking the same thing, but from a different lens.
So we have to remember that while we listen to this part of your conversation.
Sure.
All right.
But I mean, in general, like if you're talking about, like, I don't, look, put everybody in the bucket here. Noom, Virta, like there's, they all have their little slight little, nuances.
Yep.
But basically, if you peel back what Virta is doing, right? So, and if you peel back what they said, right? So delivering 0% utilization growth. So the way I read that is that some employers are already offering GLP-1, right? What they're saying is, I won't, I'll stop you from having increase.
Yes.
0% utilization growth. Right? To remember that part.
Yeah.
Secondly, I love this because we've talked about this a lot. It was even at the MedInvest in Chicago when you had, that panel.
Yep.
GLP-1, yes, magic drug, silver bullet, all that stuff. But it cannot just be the way you're going to change your lifestyle or weight and keep it off. You have to have a holistic sort of program, right? And so, and Virta and all these companies have sort of, that's where, like, they were there, then GLP-1 showed up and they're like, oh crap. Oh, yes, let's tell people you have to do GLP-1, but then continue our program as well.
Yeah.
And so the fundamental bedrock of their program is that, look, we're going to engage your members, we're going to risk stratify them, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. We're going to educate them, right? So it's first and foremost, it talks about nutrition, wellness, education, right? It's kind of like what Noom is doing, what Virta is doing as well. But, clinically backed, peer-reviewed, all that sort of. But then also, I call it, gamified from a consumer perspective, right? It looks more like Netflix, not the CDC website, right? Like, again, not picking on CDC, but the government website, right?
Yep.
So, and then you combine that with where are you on your GLP-1 trajectory? If you're on it, then okay, we got to figure out, like, you're not gonna like increase it or change it or whatever it is. But then combine that with wellness, nutrition, therapy, right?
Yeah.
So medical nutrition therapy is a proven sort of, form of therapy.
Yeah.
So this is what it is, right? This is sort of their combined holistic program. So they're very focused on, out of all their elements, it's nutrition therapy, right? Because from a weight management perspective, GLP-1 administration education around nutrition and a balanced diet, weight management program, and then supplement that with, virtualized therapy.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty much what it is.
I guess the part that I don't understand is, okay, fine, you have someone who's already on GLP-1.
Yeah.
And that person doesn't spend more on GLP-1s in that year. So you're holding it at 0%
Yeah.
utilization growth.
Yeah.
But what about a person who was not on GLP-1 but really wants to get one? That would be a utilization growth, right?
That would be. And
So I guess what they're trying to do is saying they're going to try people first on a GLP-1 alternative. So there's going to be a tiered approach.
There's going to be a tiered approach. And I think that's that's from one side confidence that they have, because their research shows that, I don't know what they were showing, like 10, 15% reduction or whatever. They say that their program works, and they've sort of queried their data and had it's peer reviewed, third party, endorsed and whatever it is. So look, effectively, we all know this. Like, we all know what the right thing to do is. We all know what the right thing to eat is, to do it, and all that sort of stuff. But changing behavior modification is super difficult. So are they putting themselves out there? Sure.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, think about this. They're providing, I know it's only for the first year, but given that they themselves quoted the industry figure of how much people, companies are spending more and more, it's a pretty big gamble to make. So I'm going to be watching this closely.
Yeah, and look, I love the confidence here, right? I have seen startups put 100% of their revenue at risk.
Fees at risk.
Fees at risk. But it's fees. What you can call it fees. It's revenue.
It is revenue.
It's revenue. Sure. And hell, I've even done it in my startup entrepreneur days.
Okay.
Right? Because, and I'll tell you one of the main reasons you take this bold move. And by the way, I've recommended this as a board advisor to companies as well. If you are confident behind it, more times than not, it can work out for you, okay? And the main impetus behind this also, as long as you can back up your shit, is that you are lowering the crap out of your sales cycle. And in healthcare, anything you can do to curb sales cycle, do it.
Is a win,
right?
Okay.
So I've seen it done before. They're sort of betting the farm on this, right? Huge, massive gamble, right? I'm wondering what their investors are thinking about this, right? But, so I think maybe reading the fine points on these contracts will be really important.
I have to get my hands on one.
Right?
Send me some on Signal, please.
Yeah.
Send me a contract.
Right? So, I mean, but because I think the other big thing is that how are they going to calculate the number on these things? Like, how are they going to actually calculate that utilization number you talked about? And they're really putting their margins on the line here.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But if it works,
yes,
big winner, right?
Absolutely.
Because sales cycles will shorten up. People are going to show up in droves. If it backfires, one thing that's definitely going to happen is their future IPO is on the back burner. Oh, did I just say that?
I think you just said that. Okay. All right. On that bold note, we'll close out this episode. Samir, when we meet next month, maybe the Middle East will have completely changed. But all we can say is that at least there's never a dull moment in 2025. We may be graying much faster than we want to.
Hey, you know what? My T-shirt will tell you what as soon as we start the next episode, it'll just tell you how things are.
Oh my
God. If it says crazies or something like Stranger Things, then we're continuing.
I think we'll be on this path for quite some time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to our Debunked channel on YouTube. Email us at debunked@medcitynews.com, and always comment.
Always comment. Send us your
love and hate.
Love and hate, and some archaic word that we should use next time in the episode.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you so much.